So just a few days ago, we sat down and talked about Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners remaining active in the transfer portal as they had just gotten a win from former Tennessee defensive lineman Dejon Terry. However, it did not take long for Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners to get another win, both in the transfer portal and along that interior defensive line. This time, former Utah State defensive lineman Phillip Paea has announced his intention to transfer from Utah State to Oklahoma, something we need to talk about. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Are you excited with how Brent Venables has utilized the transfer portal? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content, and you don't want to miss any of it. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. Those interactions seem small. They are massive to content creators such as myself, and we're on a push to 20,000 subscribers. I'd love to have you a part of this unbelievable community. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And kind of like we talked about with Dejon Terry, I understand this addition for the Oklahoma Sooners. One thing we've talked about ad nauseum on this channel, whether it be through videos, whether it be through live streams, is the need for Brent Venables to address the interior of that defensive line. Now, the coach there, Todd Bates, he's proved that he can do it. He did phenomenal work at Clemson. It's just going to take some time. And one thing we need to address before we really dive into this is why it's going to take some time. And that's the vast difference in philosophical approaches to how defense is played between Alex Grinch and Brent Venables. Alex Grinch ran the speed defense, and Brent Venables' defense is winning the point of attack. It's about pinning your ears back and playing downhill, ferocious, aggressive football. If you go back to watch those Clemson defenses, Brent Venables lived by the blitz and died by the blitz, and he had so many creative packages he'd throw out there. So it's two totally different philosophies to playing defense. The hard part is whenever Brent Venables inherits that, he didn't have the pieces he needed to be able to maximize the defense, which is why we see so much attention paid to that defensive line through the transfer portal. Because if we really start breaking down the additions that Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners have made via the transfer portal specifically at one position group, this interior defensive line, it begins to paint a picture. You have Phillip Paea, who they just got. You have Dejon Terry, who they just got. But you also have Devon Sears. You have Rondell Bothroyd. You have Trace Ford. And you have Jacob Lacey. So this is an area where the coaching staff has been cognizant that they need to stack talent. And I talk about this all the time. The reason why that interior defensive line is so important to the Brent Venables defense is they're setting the tone for everything. Dominating the line of scrimmage is necessary in that defensive scheme. Either the defensive linemen are making plays themselves, or they're quasi the ones making plays. And why I say quasi, they're plugging holes, they're plugging gaps, making running backs bounce to areas where the linebackers are filling those gaps. That's what I mean when I say the defensive linemen are quasi-making the play. That's not going to show up in the stat sheet because they didn't make the tackle. But had they not done their job, the running back wouldn't have bounced and gone right to where the linebacker wanted him to be. That's exactly why I say the interior defensive line is so important, not just for the Brent Venables scheme, but for college football, but when we really start diving into it, especially for the Brent Venables scheme. And who is Phillip Paea? Well, Phillip Paea is transferring from Utah State, where unfortunately he didn't get to play a full 2022 season because injury sidelined him. He did, however, get to play in a few games where he recorded some tackles, and interestingly enough, he recorded an interception. The most compelling thing for me about Phillip Paea is the size, where he's listed at 6'4", 305 pounds per ESPN, and that directly goes into the conversation we talked about with Dejon Terry, where whenever we were talking about Dejon Terry, I pointed all of your attention to his stats. And I said, look, we can look at the stats. We can have a conversation about the stats, where if you're expecting this guy to give you Aaron Donald production, that might not be what it is, but we need to look at the need of the defense and how this addition helps address that need. And in that conversation, Dejon Terry was an absolute win for Oklahoma because he addressed a need. Looking at the stats is one thing. That tells part of the picture, but it doesn't tell the complete picture, especially when we're talking about this interior defensive line, and especially when we start diving into why it's so important. Because this might not be a guy that gets 15 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, but if he can plug up the holes, if he can lock up the offensive linemen and allow the linebackers, the cheetah, to run free, he will have done his job and done it well. And I think it's also important that they continue stacking the defensive line talent, because there's some rumors flying around about an injury at Oklahoma along that defensive line. Now, I'm not going to say much more because it's just rumors right now and it's not my place to speculate. But even outside of that, we have talked so many times about this being such a position of need. It makes sense that Oklahoma would still be active in the transfer portal, trying to find guys that they think can help add in depth to that defensive line, something they need. But I can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.